Well, good evening and welcome to the last tackle here on the Sportsman Rugby League. Just about got our breaths back from an unbelievable weekend at Hill Dickinson Stadium for Magic. Alongside me this evening, Eddie Hemmings. Eddie, good to see you. I love a positive story about rugby league. We need more of them. Undeniably, I don't think it's in any contention whatsoever. Magic weekend at Everton, huge success.
It was fantastic, and the crowds and the figures said it all. The games were a bit 50-50 in my view, but the fact that the fans turned up and loved every minute of it. There are a few things that struck me watching it. The 6 again rule made a comeback. I might be well and truly out of order here, but I can't remember as many 6 agains in some of the games as we saw over the weekend, so that's fine. Maybe I'm mistaken, probably. We had a penalty awarded for an incorrect play the ball. Well, you could have one of those in every set of 6. Brilliant, made me smile. There was a successful conversion chalked off because he went over the time. That was another first. These are not negatives really, they're things that make you sit up and take notice. But what made me sit up and take notice was the fact that there's a magic weekend there. It seems now to be set in stone that Everton is suddenly the place to be. And what's more, we had the man who's going to be, in everyone's eyes, the future Prime Minister within the next fortnight, saying he's going to take the game forward, help it from the highest office in the land, and alongside Lindsay Hoyle, who's the Speaker of the House of Commons, they're both former RFL presidents, of course, they're going to really get behind this sport and push it forward. Please, let's hope that that is the case, and we see all that. Now, that's all off the field, basically, but on the field, thoroughly enjoyed it. 6 games, another one in France, record attendance. What's not to love? Fantastic. The only problem for me was England went and beat Mexico at night in the World Cup. And any national exposure we'd have got for a fantastic weekend, a wonderful Wigan Saints match that finished it off, and everything else was slightly taken away from us. But from Rugby League's point of view, marvellous, absolutely great. And the gesture by Betfred to pay all that money in to the MND fund, well, it's just another thumbs up. It was absolutely brilliant and a memorable weekend. Yeah,
we'll touch on the MND stuff shortly. Some interesting points you raised. I think I'm very nervous about this turning into a political podcast, but whatever your persuasion is, if you're going to have a Prime Minister, he might as well be a rugby league fan and he might as well be shouting about the sport from the rooftops, and that is what happened on Sky at the weekend. The thing with the England-Mexico game, there's always kind of interesting conversations about the timing of Magic Weekend and where in the calendar it sits. Yeah. We tried it as round 1, kind of at the early start of the concept.
That worked as well, by the way.
Which worked.
Yeah.
There was one, I think it was in 2022, that was later on in the season because of COVID. They picked September and thought, we should be safe by then. I thought that worked really well as well because every game just had a little bit more kind of jeopardy on the line, or most games had a bit more jeopardy on the line. I know there's arguments for bank holiday weekends to make it easier for people to travel. I think it's one of those issues, isn't it, that you're probably never going to please everyone and there's never going to be a 100% correct answer. I think what we have pleased everyone with, we're going back to Everton next year. There seems to be I've not seen a single person saying that Everton is not the right place for Magic Weekend.
No, they loved it. And I went to the test match last year, England and Australia, and I thought, what a fantastic stadium. I'm a Liverpool fan, but still, what a great stadium it is. It's a good walk from the mainline rail stations. You get a taxi going there, it's about £8 or £9. Coming back, it's 2 and 3 times as much as that because they're a bit busy with 60,000 odd people trying to get back to the city. There are a few pubs on the way where you can call in and refresh for the half-hour, 3/4 hour walk you've got. That's the only negative for me, that it's a little bit out of the city, but it's just exceptional. It's a great, great stadium.
The caveat of that, it being a little bit out of the city, I think there's probably another side of that coin, in that one of the great things things that people really enjoy about Newcastle is that you step out St James's Park and you're in the pubs, you're in the city centre. Entirely anecdotally, I've not seen any data on it, but having been in the stadium on Saturday and Sunday, I felt that more people were staying from game 1 into 2 and 3. I just wonder if that's because
it's a long walk.
You're not just stepping straight back out of the stadium.
So you can't go out and come back.
Maybe there's it's some balance to that. I just felt the design of the stadium is quite steep, isn't it? That just created more of an atmosphere, even in the games where the crowds were smaller. And look, there'll be a novelty factor to it, and if we're still at Everton in 4 years' time, then maybe people will be saying, as we have with Newcastle, let's look at other options and let's find some change. But for the time being, Everton, for me, was absolutely outstanding. I think another issue that we've played around with Magic a lot is this year we had the rivals kind of round format. We've tried first playing third based on the previous league table and that kind of thing. Pros and cons for both, but I thought on the day, having a whole derby on the Saturday, great to see Leeds Bradford back on that stage, and then we'll talk about it in more detail later on, but what we got served up in the final game on Sunday, atmosphere, rugby-wise, it was just electric.
It was, and you're right, the people stayed for the last game on the last day. The pictures looked fantastic on TV. You know, the stadium was looking full. It was a brilliant atmosphere. It was a fantastic game, as you say. A little bit of jeopardy because of all the comments about have Saints lost their identity from Matt Peet. It seemed to wind everybody up on both sides. Brilliant. The one thing you mentioned just earlier was the timing and the positioning of it in the season. As I remember rightly, Nigel Wood, who dreamt the Magic Weekend up all those years ago, it was when the BBC wanted the Challenge Cup in August. And so we lost the Spring Festival in May. We're getting the Spring Festival back in May next year, in the bank holiday weekend. So I think that's a big plus. That's the position of it for me. It should be earlier in the season. It should be in May, just after the end of the soccer season, when the pitches are all available, whichever ground you want to go to, providing you can do the deal with the clubs. But play it in May, give us back the Spring Festival, because that's, I believe, again, where Wembley has lost a little bit of its appeal. It's too late in the season now. It should be in May. That should be. If it's not going to be then, let's have the Magic Weekend then and stick to that plan. Make sure that the Magic Weekend is our spring festival for rugby league.
In terms of the on-the-field action, we'll start off with game one. York back-to-back wins. Huddersfield, I don't know where to start with them, really. I think when a new coach comes in and immediately says, we're not fit enough and we're tiring in games because I've been flogging this team, that will set alarm bells ringing. And I kind of went into the weekend, as I have done with the last couple of Huddersfield games, thinking, well, surely these players are looking at this saying, if I want to be in this team next year, if I want to be playing in this team next year, then I need to start, growing a third lung, essentially, and working out. I didn't see that particularly. It wasn't, certainly for the first 40, it wasn't dreadful by any stretch from performance basis from Huddersfield. But when York found another place to go and another gear, Huddersfield weren't able to match it.
No, it wasn't the best start, if I'm honest. And Huddersfield, the most successful team, strangely enough, in Magic Weekend history. I think they came into that match with 12 wins. There's been a lot of talk about what's going on at Huddersfield and the change of coaches. I mean, Luke Robinson lost his job and all that went on. They thought that they were going to get all the good players back and suddenly there would be no problems at all. I thought it was an error-ridden game from start to finish. It was scruffy in parts. You mentioned the fact that the new coach has said his team isn't fit. I mean, a lot of the players look like different animals than they were this time last year. Tui Lolohea, for instance, great player, hardly has an influence anymore on the game for Huddersfield. I'm not just singling him out purely and simply, but he is one of their star men and has been one of their star men. I thought it was a poor match. I thought it started the weekend off pretty poorly. Having said that, from York's point of view, what a win. What a win from them. Huddersfield stuck at the bottom of the table, look like they're going nowhere this year, and they're not. A lot of talk about in the Championship next year. I think that is a question mark that has to be answered later on by the powers that be. Ralph Rimmer then, having returned to Huddersfield, coming out after the match and saying that Huddersfield would become a force to be reckoned with in Super League in the not too distant future. They're going to be playing in a new stadium that Ken Davey is going to buy within the next 3 or 4 years. I hope so, because they don't want to be going to Dewsbury every week. I saw the Dewsbury match on TV, and it was at the time when the NRL discussions were up and running, and they still are. And I thought to myself, if the NRL are looking at this at Dewsbury, with all due respect to Dewsbury and their ground, it looked like a park field. For the Super League, not on. And I hope that Huddersfield survive. I hope for Ken Davies' sake that Huddersfield survive. There's talk of 15 teams in the competition. Who would you replace them with? Would you let York stay in with all their financial problems. We don't know. We don't know if they will survive the financial problems, a la Salford 12 months ago. But would you let London in? You don't know whether London are playing in front of big crowds or small crowds, because every week in the papers, crowd attendance not available. So what are the figures? They've got to look at that. If we're going down this IMG route again of grading, which apparently we are, if there's nobody really turning up in London, and London, according to IMG, is a vital cog in growing the game, giving us a big team in London, you've got to see how many people are actually attending the matches. They're sweeping all before them in the Championship, spending a fortune on players, new signings again for next year. They think they're in. I'm not so sure that they are. And so there's a problem there, I think, for the game to solve between now and the end of this season.
I think this is probably one of the issues with the IMG model, isn't it? Is that I'm not anti-licensing, anti-franchising.
No.
We had licensing before for that 3-year period. Now you get 12 months, and you have to,
You have to improve.
and then they throw all the cards up at the air and see how they fall again at the end of that 12 months. Feels like the London thing. If it's ever going to work, this is it. The money that's come in and the backing that they've got. Like you say, there's some questions to be asked, and who do you lose?
Well, at the
it's
moment,
so subjective, but this is the kind of thing.
Lewis, on the field at the moment, you lose Huddersfield. They've won 2 games all season.
But if
I know they've got 5 now at home, haven't they, on the run? This is their big chance to make an impact on the season with 5 home games on the run, because the Giants Stadium is reseeded and sorted out for the start of the football season. Understand that. But 5 on the run at home, here's their chance now to try and make a statement and try and bring these words of Ralph Rimmer's to some sort of solution. But it's a huge job, and they're playing in a huge stadium with very few people watching them. It's always been a problem. It's been a perennial problem for the Giants. I don't think going to Dewsbury is going to solve that. I don't think Ken is going to buy Halifax, as he once stated he might do. So where do they play? Huddersfield or Huddersfield, not Dewsbury. Huddersfield's the birthplace of the game.
Yes.
He wants his own stadium in the courtesy of Kirklees Council in Huddersfield. He's poured millions into that club over the years. He deserves a new stadium. He deserves 5 or 6, 10,000 capacity. It would look something then. It would look like a Super League ground with a few people watching. At the moment, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
They're all over the place. And even when you get Wigan, Hull KR, Saints, Warrington, it's just one end that's busy. The rest of it is spread out. You know, they're sprinkled about the place. I don't envy them. I don't envy them in Huddersfield.
It's really difficult, and there is pressure being added because London are spending so much money and doing so well in the Championship. And, you know, look, I think if we still had a promotion and relegation model, London would be past the post
now
2 months ago, probably.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, that's going to be an interesting sort of subplot to the back end of this season for sure. Just like to move on to game 2 at Hill Dickinson, and a Hull derby. Always, if you get a chance to watch a Hull derby, you should take it. And I think that was another reason why a lot of people were in the stadium. And probably there'll be Hull FC fans kind of spitting feathers at this, but I reckon both sets of supporters, probably both teams, walked away from that game relatively satisfied. Hull KR got the 2 points, they got the win, that's what's important for them. Hull FC will look at that and say it's probably the closest they've got to Hull KR in a while. There were some glimpses of a team in there were some glimpses of progress. Certainly at half-time it was game on, probably for an hour it was game on, which we've not necessarily seen between those two sides. And I just thought, I mean, there was a spell in that second half where it looked like Hull FC were really on top, and then they just faded away. But I thought for them, probably they'll be pleased with elements of it.
Probably. They won't be pleased with the end result, as you rightly say. I mean, the bragging rights belong to Hull KR now. I think I'm right in saying that they've now won 9 of 10 against the Black and Whites under Willie Peters. Well, the Hull FC supporters will be waving him a fond farewell at the end of this season. But, you know, Mikey Lewis, he got a hat-trick against Hull at the Magic, 4 years ago. At it again on Saturday. A try that he created really with his own little dink over the top and everything else. And he got his try on his 25th birthday. I mean, he's a thorn in everybody's side, isn't he, Mikey? He's the one that everybody loves to hate in Super League in 2026. But boy, what a player he is.
Well, every single fan would sign him in an instant, wouldn't they?
Well, they all come to me and say, "What? I can't stand that." But I tell you what, if he was playing in their colours,
they'd love him.
He would absolutely love him. Now, Steve McNamara moves in, doesn't he? at the end of this season, leaves Warrington and goes to the Black and Whites. What a job he's got on his hands. Yes, they're in transition. I mean, they can say goodbye to the playoffs this year. They ain't going to make it. There's no question about that. So the only way is up for Steve McNamara from here on in. But in players like Moy and Martin, they have something to build on. And I'm sure Steve is going to be looking around and dragging players in from all over the place to try and shore this club up, because Hull is one of the hotbeds of the game. Hull KR, over the last 2 or 3 years, on the rise. Hull on the slide. Get those both together again, and Hull almost becomes the capital of rugby league if they're 1 and 2 in the table in 2027. But yeah, I mean, Hull KR, don't write them off. I would not write them off. No. I think they could go and retain the crown. They've got to get past Leeds and Wigan, understandably, but I think they're on the go, and they're a big side. They've got a big pack. They're brutal. They're quick. And they've got Mikey. So anything's possible.
Well, and they've got a storyline now, haven't they? Because they can send Willie Peters off. Mm.
Well, I wonder if he'll go off with another title.
Well, and that's it, isn't it? I think you can...
Look what happened when Sean Wayne left Wigan.
Exactly. I don't think you can overstate the importance of those kind of emotional things throughout a season.
And all the players at Leeds that were going at the end of their season, you know, the Sinfield era, the Danny Maguire, the Rob Burrow, they all... Jamie Jones, they all left with a grand final winner's ring on their finger. I think that's a huge thing to think about moving forward. Hull KR, I'm always impressed when I see them, really am. They've had a couple of dips, I know, lately, but you know they have a real go. They're physical, they're quick, and Jez Litton, Mikey Lewis, match winners.
And Warrington, Sam Burgess, I think, must have been smashing mirrors when you look at his injury list, and it hasn't got any better by the looks of it. They'll feel like they underperformed in that game. They'll feel like, you know, they should have got closer to Lee than they did. I want to talk about Lee, though, and they're, over the past few seasons, I think we need to really talk about what happens at Lee when we get to July. Their first half of the season compared to their second half of the season. They just get to this time of year, and I don't know what it is. Adrian Lamb seems to find something, and they seem to hit form, steam their way into the playoffs. Signs of it happening again.
Indeed, and they're getting a lot of their stars back. You know, I mean, this is another one of the big features of Super League this year. The number of injuries that we've had across the board. Lee have suffered as much as most. I mean, maybe not suffering at the moment as much as Wigan and Warrington. I've read today it's either 21 or 19 stars will not be turning out this week for one reason or another. Basically injuries, also a bit of suspension and problems. But the injuries in Super League this year have been phenomenal. I can't. You know, we go back a few years, don't we? Right back to the beginning. But yeah, I think Lee's was the performance of day one. But I think Warrington produced their worst 40 minutes of the season in the first half. They couldn't buy a trick, could they? They were dropping ball, they were missing tackles, conceding penalties. But, you know, error-ridden knock-ons, penalties. But to be fair, that day, 11 stars sat on the sideline. The England captain was one of them. Toby King was another. Joe Philbin was another. Aaron Lindop, Josh Stewlis. I mean, the list is endless for Warrington. And there's an excuse. But believe me, in Warrington, they won't have any of that. You know, the town will not have any of that. They've waited since 1955 for a tilt at the title. And they thought, dare I say it, they thought this was our year. With all these injuries, it's going to be a mountain for them to climb. And beginning at Wigan at the weekend, it gets even higher, doesn't it?
It does, and we'll talk about that game later on. Game 4 on day one. I completely understand the logic in the two French teams playing each other in a neutral venue in France. I think it makes perfect sense, especially with it being a kind of odd number of games in each round. And the only slight shame is that we all missed out, everyone that was there missed out in the stadium on seeing a real statement performance from Toulouse.
How about that? I mean, the first time that Toulouse have beaten the Catalans in a competitive match, I mean, the scoreline, 60 points to 18. I mean, again, Catalan, not long ago, looked like they had the pack that was going to take on every pack in the competition. Toulouse produced this. contrasting opinions from the two coaches I noticed. Sylvain Hules said it was a magical win. Not bad for a Frenchman to have a play on words like that. But John Cartwright, disappointed with the Dragons' commitment. He thought the result came right after the Blue. He thinks they've been making good progress for 5 or 6 weeks. This, he says, was like a punch in the face. It was. Tell you who stood out a bit for me, Ollie Ashall-Bott.
Yes.
What a game he had.
And
we haven't got a full back at the moment for England, have we?
Well, no. And he kind of broke through at Widnes, didn't he? I don't know, 6-7 years ago when they were last in Super League, and then disappeared off the radars, gone to Toulouse. I watched him a few times in the Championship last season and said, well, you know, there's a player in there. And then he's really kind of returned with aplomb, you know, with Toulouse being back in Super League. And like you say, an outside shout for that squad at the end of the year. If he continues up this form, he may be more than an outside shout.
He's always involved, isn't he? I mean, he obviously his duties as a fullback are in defence, but also forming the link with the three quarters. He's quick. He's got a bit of pace about him. He's brave.
Yeah, I think he's smart.
Yes, and he learned his trade at Widnes, and they'll be claiming some responsibility for that. But yeah, I mean, who's going to play fullback for England in the World Cup? I'm not saying Ollie Ashall-Bott is the solution, but as you say, he's a shout. He's a possibility. He's got 10 games now to prove that he possibly could make it. And
what a story that would be if he did.
Oh, what wouldn't it just be? This also was Toulouse's biggest ever winning margin that they've ever had. When he's come out of the Blue, I honestly thought Catalan would go there and win.
I think anyone who says that they saw that result coming is lying. None of us did. And, you know, if Toulouse can go on a bit of a run, playoffs are out of the picture, of course, but they're a lot of fun, Toulouse, when they get it right. They play a expansive, very typically French way of, you know, style of rugby league football, don't they? And it's a lot of fun to watch.
Bit of French flair, you're right.
Moving on to another team that I found really fun, Wakefield, when they get it right. We know what Darrell's going to try and do with a rugby league team. They're going to attack. They certainly did that at the weekend. Casa having similar problems to Huddersfield. They just can't find any sort of consistency. When you think that they've made a step forward, it's next game tends to be frustrating. But Wakefield, on the other hand, are right in the mix for a team that was in the Championship 2 years ago. Yeah. We'll be talking about them in semi-final time, that's for sure.
Well, they've got a few bob behind them now, haven't they? The owner is putting his money where his mouth is. They've got some big-name signings promised for next year as well. Tom Johnston is in the England squad. He's scoring tries for fun. 12 and 8, I think, now. Or 12 and 9. I wonder what thoughts were going through Darrell Powell's mind. Obviously, he wants Wakefield to win, but he's watching the side that he guided to the grand final in 2017. We all know what happened after the semi-final win against Saints, and the wheels fell off, and the Zach Hardaker problem, etc. and so forth. But I just wonder what he was thinking about Castleford. You know, it was Sweet Caroline in 2017 at Cass. I still believe that the Castleford club and supporters gave Sweet Caroline as a sporting anthem to the rest of the world, and it's been picked up everywhere. What a year that was for Cass. They've gone like that since, and Wakefield have gone like that with the arrival of the money. Darrell Powell, he had a difficult time at Warrington. Boy, has he proved himself in his comeback at Wakefield. They too, I mean, they're up there very nicely placed for a bid for Old Trafford again. And you know, there's a few men there, as I say, Tom Johnson, Jake Truman, Mike McMeekin. Are they dark horses, I wonder? What would happen if Wakefield got to the grand final at Old Trafford?
Well, again, what a story it would be. It'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't it, I think? And we all, well, from a neutral's perspective, I think a lot of us were very happy to see the 5th name on the grand final trophy last year. I don't have a dog in a fight, but I wouldn't turn down getting a 6th one this year either.
No, they're going really, really well. Ryan Carr apparently is quite vocal during the course of the games. He sits not too far away from the Sky commentators, and they tell me that he's a bit noisy, but he was so far away, I think, from the players on the weekend that he couldn't get the message through to them. He said they gave up, and he also says he knows certain players who gave up, and he knows who they are, and it won't continue, he says. So
we'll probably learn who those players are, won't we, in the next few weeks.
I think so. Look out. But Wakefield going great guns. Great guns.
I think we've got one big question at the top of the Betfred Super League at the moment. Leeds 4 points clear. Brilliant in Vegas. Brilliant at times throughout the season. Do they have the staying power to turn this 4 point lead in July into a League Leaders' Shield in September and a Grand Final trophy in October?
On the face of it at the moment, you have to say they have. I'm quite surprised, really, because when Brad Arthur first came, I thought they're not playing for him. It doesn't look as though he's got that much idea about Leeds Rhinos and the Super League and everything else. But haven't they, again, come out of the shadows as far as he is concerned? Bradford back in Super League for the first time in 12 years. My mind went back to the very first Magic. Leeds and Bradford, and that never to be forgotten moment when Steve Ganson gave the penalty and was a host of players offside, and Leeds pinched the game, and Justin Harris was absolutely furious. But they are marching on, Leeds. Ash Handley in remarkable form. Remarkable for Jake Connor.
And, I'm certainly not dismissing what Marcus Evo has done this season, because plenty of people have tried and have not put up those numbers. But I think the man inside him has got a huge amount to do with that. I think Ash Handley's having a season. He's
been brilliant. And what about the guy on the wing, Nakasiva?
Well, yes.
You can't stop him.
No.
He gets the ball 12, 15 metres from the line. He's in every time. 28 tries now, I think, this season. 10 rounds to go.
But I think a lot of those he would have turned around to his centre and said, "Thank you very much." Yeah,
it's a bit like, was it? Now I always get these two. Was it Andy Courier who used to feed Martin a fire? I think it was.
Yeah, possibly. But it's similar, when Denny Solomona slightly more recently had that kind of season. A lot of those for Cass, a lot of those were, put on a plate for him. But yeah, that edge for Leeds. And to be fair, Brodie Croft. At the heart of it all, signed for Warrington next year. No sign that he's put the cue in the rack from a Leeds perspective. He seems to be finding maybe his best form for them this season. Lockie Miller out the back's been outstanding. They're very, very dangerous. And of course, you've got the man of steel in there in Jake Connor, who, although I don't know if he's having quite the kind of explosive season that he had, I think that's probably just because everyone around him is playing better.
Well, you talk about explosive. This man, Siva, he is explosive. As I say, 28 tries. In all. If he scores this week in Perpignan, he'll equal the record set by Richard Horne in 2006 of 11 straight games when he's scoring a try. Now, the way the Catalan performed last weekend, don't back against him doing exactly that. I mean, he is incredible. He's big, he's powerful, he's quick. You need 4 men to put him into touch when he's got that corner flag in his eye.
Well, we'll touch on that game shortly. Leeds haven't scored a point in Catalans since 2022, so we'll see. I find it very unlikely to think that record will remain. We'll move on. I'm just conscious of time, but I think we could talk about this game for another hour. Wigan versus St Helens from the first carry.
It wasn't even the first carry, it was the chase.
Well, yeah,
Brad O'Neill gets bundled over, the players all come together and the tone was set.
And it was on, and it was brilliant, and it was so much fun. A lot of injuries for both teams, the serious ones as well, which we don't want to see. But just a game that you couldn't take your eyes off. The intensity that it was played at in a stadium like that, an atmosphere like that, brilliant. And maybe because of the injuries, but maybe because of the nature of the win for Wigan, I just feel like it's a game. We get to September, don't we, when we start to look at the league table and start to just look back at key moments of the season as to how things kind of panned out. I just feel like that's one that we'll look back on for both teams and say, wow, that was a significant night.
Well, the biggest rugby league derby of all, Wigan Saints. I know Hull and Hull KR will argue with that till the cows come home, but they saved the best match till the last match. And it was breathtaking from start to finish. The tone was set, as I said, when Brad O'Neill got taken out by clamour on the way for chasing the kick-off. And it just carried on from then. And I get the impression that Matty Peet's comment about Saints in the semi-final, they've lost their identity. I think that's niggled people at St Helens, and that and they want to prove a point to them. They really got stuck in, as you say, both sides. There was some enormous hits, frightening collisions that were going on, and as you say, a lot of very serious injuries. 3 yellow cards. Wellesby got 2 of them, didn't he? And Shea O'Connor got Delaney's massive shot on him. You just sat there and your mouth was open from start to finish saying, when's this going to end? How is this going to end? And poor old Jackson Hastings,
well,
last minute, way out on the touchline, huge kick.
Yeah, and
didn't quite make it.
He won't be the last player to miss a kick
No,
of that
no,
magnitude.
no. Not from out there, no.
And he's not always been a regular goal kicker, has he, Jackson? So, he stepped up and had a go and obviously missed. But even just that, just when you think the game's done, hang on, we're going to pull it back and we'll give you one last shot.
And they nearly got it, didn't they? They nearly did. I thought we were going golden point to finish and a golden weekend. It never happened.
And interesting that, much talked about line now, infamous line now from Matty Peet about St Helens losing their identity. I don't necessarily want to get into the ins and outs of have they, but it's a comment that's fired people up. It's a comment that's obviously riled St Helens a little bit, whatever they say. Now, there is a line in the sand that we don't want to cross as a sport in terms of what gets said and how things are stoked up. I've kind of long felt that our line in the sand is far too conservative, and actually things like that, that's what sells tickets, that's what gets people interested, that's what fires it up. I'm not saying we go and become boxing, but Matty Peet has said a line in an interview that's created a narrative for the entire season, and if you needed to fuel the fire of Wigan versus Saints anymore, all of a sudden you do not want to miss that game.
No, and to a degree, he's right. To a degree. I mean, Wigan produce players off the production line. You look at all the teams in Super League and how many ex-Wiganers are featuring and starring in those teams in Super League. The list, again, is a mile long. So to a degree, he's right. But, I mean, he's got this wonderful, as I say, this number of clubs locally who just feed players in, and they're all decent players. And Wigan find the ones who can take them forward. I mean, Warrington are doing the same. They have to at the minute, the way their injuries are going. They've got to produce youngsters, and Sam Burgess gives them the chance. Paul Rowley's first season at St Helens. St Helens isn't Toronto or Salford. No,
it's a big job.
It's a huge job for Paul. It's a bit like Areola, the new manager of Liverpool. Did great at Bournemouth. Bournemouth ain't Liverpool. Let's see what happens in the Premier League when he gets in the big time. I think Paul's doing a decent job. I really do. They've had changes behind the scenes as well, haven't they? It's good. We've got 10 games to go, 10 matches to go, 10 rounds to go. It's fascinating, isn't it? It doesn't get any worse year on year.
And I think what I would say about the production line thing is, I think sometimes it gets overlooked. That St Helens team, Wellesby, an academy product.
Yes.
Dagnall, Davies, Whitby, Noah Stevens. I'm sure I'm missing players out of that. St Helens are doing their bit. They are pulling players through as well. But yeah, what a game! It was a real privilege to be there on Sunday night as those two teams tore into each other. I hope that long list of injuries. I hope that certainly some of them looked very serious. I hope they're not, but. Just, the one downside on what was a brilliant game of rugby league.
It was gladiatorial, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was outstanding.
And we always want that. The people say, bring back the biff. Well, you can't do that. That's a nonsense. But you can bring back what we have had over the years, now and again in Super League, and that's massive confrontations, big hits, wonderful skill. And so long as your team finds a way to win, you will be delighted. Absolutely. Yeah. And Wigan will be delighted with that victory. No question at all. They're nicely poised now to push on. But with Hull KR, Wakefield, can Warrington rekindle? Can they get some bodies back on the field? Leeds going so well. Do we look... Is that it? Is that the top four? Do you think that's the top five? Is anyone going to break out from the pack and get up amongst them?
I think Lee are the team that...
They've got this prop forward they've signed, haven't they, from the NRL?
Yeah, he's coming
shortly,
away,
and there's supposed to be more on the way as well. Derek Beaumont's putting his money where his mouth is again.
And we keep talking about Lee as, use that word, dark horses. How many times can a team make a semi-final before they're not a dark horse? But they've not come from nowhere, this League team. They've been consistently building for a few years, and like we said earlier, they find this time of year
And if we're talking about IMG grading systems, it's one of the best events in the Super League when Lear is home.
Well,
Derek puts all sorts on. You know, there's
Edwin
fibre.
Pape should be worth an IMG point on his own.
Absolutely, it should. Absolutely, it should. And good on them. You know, good on them. And as you say, they've come good in the recent past. And who's to say they're not going to do it again this year and rattle a few feathers?
Yeah, big weekend in terms of the table in the Betfred Super League, but alongside all of the drama and the action, title sponsors Betfred were donating £180 for the MND Association for every unique try celebration. Across the weekend, Betfred, of course, donating £180 for every try celebration. We've had 62 of them. That's £11,160. And Fred has been on the phone and told us to round that up to £15,000. We're incredibly proud to be part of Rugby League. We're even prouder to be able to support the MND Association. What a weekend we've had here in Liverpool. 6 fantastic games of Rugby League, and we end with the news that £15,000 is heading to the MND Association. Yeah, £15,000 going straight to the MND Association, courtesy of Betfred. Fred himself making the decision to round that up. We kind of laid down the challenge to the players. We did it last year. We donated £10,000. Said it again, you know, come on, get involved, do something, and absolute full credit to the stars of the show. They really engaged with it and helped raise a lot of money for a great cause.
Yes, fabulous. And I mean, the majority of them were the Arrow, after Jay Arrow, who is, of course, suffering from MND himself in Australia at the moment at the tender age of 30. Tragic, really, absolutely tragic. I was at an event with Lindsay Burrow the weekend before the Magic, and it was actually the day of the MND round at Headingley. And Lindsay speaks wonderfully well about Rob and the trials and tribulations that he went through. I don't think you can point the finger at the game and say it's because of the physical and the physicality of rugby league that so many people pick up MND. And I made that point to Lindsay on the night. I said, did you ever talk to Rob about the repercussions? And she said, I did. And I asked him, would you change anything? And he said, no, he wouldn't. Sir Kevin, thank goodness, Sir Kevin has raised 20 million. Fred and Betfred, another 15 on top of the 10 from last year. The money is flooding in to the MND organisation to try and find a cure for this dreadful, dreadful disease. I just hope we're not as far away as a lot of people think that we still are. Is it just a fuse that blows in a human body? Is it something that you're born with and suddenly comes out at a certain stage of your life? It's an awful disease, but the more money that is raised, hopefully, the closer we're going to get to find a solution to what is a dreadful, dreadful problem for anyone who gets MND. You know, and the MNDA, Motor Neuron Disease Association, they do a wonderful job, and so too does Lindsay Burrow. Now, here's another one. You know, Sir Kevin. What about Dame Lindsay in the years to come?
I think plenty of people watching this would support that. I've been involved in rugby league for a long time, as have you. I've never known a community or a sport that reacts to tragedy and setback in quite the way that rugby league does. And every time, whether it's MND, whether it was Mossy Massoy a few years ago, or you know, whatever these situations are, it continues to just baffle me how this, I don't want to call it a small sport because it's not, but this sport that we've got just reacts every single time. Unbelievable. And, you know, as I say, great to see the players getting involved at the weekend, and I know Fred was very happy to write that cheque for £15,000 to the MND Association. Let's move on and have a look at this weekend in the Betfred Super League, because the games continue to come thick and fast. I feel like we are very much on the downward slope into the semi-finals, and that time of the year already, blinking you miss it, but here we are. And I think Thursday night, it's probably not when you look at the league table game that jumps out on you, but all of a sudden York versus Hull FC, I think will be an interesting watch, and York with an opportunity for a third consecutive win.
Yes, and they will be fancying their chances, won't they, after the weekend? I mean, they play pretty well in parts, as we alluded to earlier on. Hull have obviously got a point to prove. I can't really split that one, but I think the home advantage for York should prove fruitful for them. But I mean, hey, who am I to say things like that? I've got no idea. I just watch like the rest of us. It's an interesting game, that. There's no doubt about it, for the Thursday night. Short turnaround for them, of course, which both coaches will blame with the Thursday night. But yeah, it could go either way, that one.
Yeah, I think for York it's interesting, lots of talk about IMG and finances and all of that kind of thing. They'll probably look at it and say, we've got the one thing that we can control is our performance on the pitch, and that may just galvanise.
We were talking earlier, York have got financial problems, a la Salford last year. Say York finish 9th, 8th, what do they do? What do they do? And then they hit the wall and they go into administration. What does the game do then about York? Because they came up full of ambition, full of hope, and they've acquitted themselves well, you know. I mean, 3 in a row now, if they get that. I think the 6 points clear of Huddersfield at the bottom. That's a hell of a lot to make up for Huddersfield over the course of the latter part of the season. It's an interesting game, that. And if York win, it puts even more pressure on the administrators, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. 2 games on Friday. Starting off, I still think this will be a very, very good game. The kind of caveat to it is how much of the salary cap is going to be sat on the sidelines through injury. Wigan and Warrington, when these two teams play each other, is usually a lot of fun to watch as a neutral. Like I say, there's a few players missing, but it's a significant game for both. Wigan continuing that charge up the table, and Warrington need to stick in.
Warrington need to win. They need to steady the ship a bit. It's second against third. You mentioned the injuries, and as I say, depending on what publication you read, what website you look at, it's either 21 or 19 stars from the two sides who are going to be out of the equation. Now, we talk about youngsters. Here's the opportunity for Wigan and Warrington to prove what they're doing behind the scenes and giving their academy players the chance. I mean, from Warrington's point of view, been so impressed with Ewan Irwin this year. I don't think he's a full-back. No. But I think he is a great player of the future, this young lad. And I know the Aussies, when they went down there on the academy tour last year, they were waxing lyrical about him. And there's one or two people having a word in his ear and say, do you fancy coming and playing in the NRL? And I think he is one that could cope with that. He was the Academy Player of the Year last year, as I remember rightly, and he said then on the night when they presented him with that award, this was his year to step up. Wow, he's taken a giant stride, hasn't he? He really has. And as we said before, Wigan, Matt Peet will be in the background rolling out the production line again, and it'll be a great game. That Wigan Warrington will be a great game.
Difficult to make a prediction based on the uncertainty of the squads, but do you think Wigan at home probably just tips it in their favour?
I think that tips it in their balance. Yeah, I do. Wigan at home are formidable. You never know with Sam, do you? He just might wind them up. He might get them out there and do something.
Does have a knack, doesn't he, finding the way? Yeah. Also on Friday, another game that you'd probably look at the league table and go, but sometimes desperation can kind of breed the best games that we see, certainly some of the more entertaining ones. And the Huddersfield-Bradford, I don't think it'll be one for the purists in terms of free-flowing, crisp rugby league, but it'll be two teams desperate for a win, and sometimes that's enough.
Well, they will be desperate. Huddersfield particularly will be desperate for a win. And of course, this is a local derby for Huddersfield and Bradford, no question about that. Not too far between the two towns, two cities. I expect it to be close. I expect it to be full of drop ball errors and nerves. But having said that, it's a vital match for both. The first of these 5 games that Huddersfield have got at home, which they believe could be their salvation come the end of the season. So they'll be desperate for the win. Certainly the coach will. No doubt about that. He certainly will. Bradford, well, they are 2 of the cellar dwellers, aren't they, these two? I think you're right. I think it'd be tight. There'll be nothing much in it. Having said that, Huddersfield will probably go and win by 60 points. You watch.
Well, Bradford haven't won a game away from home.
No.
This season. So that's a challenge for them, isn't it, to get that done?
I think getting through the season and getting into a decent spot in the table is a challenge for Bradford. And to be fair, for any of the teams that came up last year, Toulouse or Bradford, the three of them, we're all marking their exam paper as we go, aren't we? They're not good enough, they're not good enough. I don't know whether we should have 14 teams in the competition.
Yeah, it's up for debate, isn't it?
Big debate. Too many games. That's why we're getting so many injuries.
Yep.
It's a long season. If you get to a grand final, you get to a Challenge Cup final, you get in the playoffs, you're playing 35 matches a year. The NRL are playing something like 26, 27. I know they've got the state of origin.
Yeah.
But, we've got a World Cup coming up at the end of the year.
Yeah,
don't hold your breath.
It's an interesting one. We'll just rattle through these next games because I'm conscious of time. Leigh versus Cass. Very difficult to see anything other than Leigh getting the win, given the performances at the weekend and the weeks prior. Yeah,
they're in Derek's home midden, so you would expect that they will walk away with that one. Castleford's struggling badly. I'd put my house on the Leigh victory there. The next game's impressive.
This is, Wigan Warrington ordinarily would be game of the round, and we've mentioned the injuries. I think this for me jumps straight off the page. Hodkinson Rovers against Wakefield Trinity.
Yeah, 2 points between the two. Wakefield win, they go 4 points clear of Hull Kingston Rovers. There's a statement of intent from Darryl Powell. It's 5th v 4th at the moment. Hull KR on 22 points, Wakefield on 22 points, Wakefield on 24. As I say, Wakefield win, they really will be talking of playoffs and possible grand finals. Hull KR win, and again, they're back in the mix, right back in the hunt once more.
Catalans Leeds, we've spoken about Leeds' horrendous record in the last few years at the Stade Gilbert Brutus. I think all the evidence suggests that they'll probably overturn that this weekend.
That's one where the history book will fly out the window, I think. Unless Catalan produce something in response to what they got last week against Toulouse. John Cartwright will be wielding the big stick this week in training and saying, look, we've got to improve on this. Yeah. And what better than to improve against the league leaders? But you can't see beyond the Rhinos. I hope that they score a point. I hope that they score a try, Leeds, because if they lose at Catalan, then people will again start putting the question marks up.
Yeah. Rounding off the weekend, ordinarily we'd talk about St Helens. We wouldn't be able to see them losing this game. That Toulouse performance at the weekend changes things, and St Helens in a precarious position given results and injury list.
Indeed so. And Toulouse way up there now in terms of spirit and confidence. You don't score 60 points against a team like the Catalan Dragons without a little bit of talent in your side. And as you say, Saints on a little bit of a wobble, maybe, beaten again by Wigan. Again, they will want to come back and prove that was just a one-off. But it's at home. You would say, ordinarily, St Helens will win it. Toulouse, they'll fly across, and they will be flying after that 60 points against Catalan. So it's nice that we can actually say, I think in all of the games, apart from 2, we haven't a clue who's going to win.
No.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. Eddie, great to see you. Thanks for coming in. You've got me excited about this weekend. You've got me excited about the end of the season. I think it is full steam ahead now to Old Trafford, but we are none the wiser as to who's going to be there. It is wide open. Leeds at the top, of course. Can they stay the field? Can they keep the pace all the way through? We will see you next week. Same time, same place here on The Last Tackle.